the day I asked for a divorce. I called Henry, but it was his secretary who answered. The young female secretary's voice was sweet and coquettish. Mr. Liu is in a meeting and can't take your call right now. If there's anything you need, you can tell me. She was Henry's new fling. This time, I didn't argue or make a scene. I just calmly said to her, "Tell him the divorce papers are on the bedside table." Chapter 1. On the way to the airport, I called Henry. A voice with a hint of sweetness answered the phone. "Ms. Helen, Mr. Liu asked me to let you know he's in a meeting. If there's anything, you can tell me, and I'll pass it on to him later." I paused, holding the phone. So, this is Henry's new fling. Her academic background is quite ordinary. Just a second-tier college degree in a place full of elites. There's no way she could have stayed. But because Henry noticed her resume at a glance, she was placed by his side as a secretary. Over the past year, Henry and I have argued countless times because of her. I even went straight to the HR department to have her fired. But Henry protected her very well. A year has passed, and she's still his secretary, flying around the country with Henry. Until now, I finally grew tired of it. This endless tug-of-war, I now realize, has no meaning at all. I couldn't be bothered with the poorly concealed provocation in her tone. I just felt utterly exhausted and said calmly, "Please tell him that the divorce papers are on the bedside table. He can sign them when he gets back." What? Before she could finish, I hung up the phone. In the past, when we fought fiercely, I always thought that if we really divorced, I would make a huge scene, smashing everything in the house. If I couldn't be happy, I wouldn't let him be happy either. But now that it's come to this, I feel unexpectedly calm. I didn't take anything with me. Everything in the house that I once shared with Henry disgusts me. The only thing I took with me was myself. Chapter 2. Just before boarding, Henry sent me a message. I saw the divorce papers. "What's wrong with you this time?" Even through the screen, I could imagine the impatient expression on his face. I didn't reply. I just switched my phone to airplane mode. The truth is, we both knew the reason. Ever since Clara became his secretary, Henry started coming home later and later. There weren't any women's hairs on him, nor any perfume scent, but he began spending more time staring at his phone, occasionally even smiling, like a young man who had just fallen in love. I hinted at it several times, but Henry just brushed it off with a calm response. "There's nothing between us. You're overthinking it. We fought countless times because of Clara." I asked him to transfer her, but Henry said I was being unreasonable. I cried. I made a scene. I begged. I even became hysterical. Like a shrew, I sat among the mess, threatening him with a shard of broken porcelain. But he just coldly said, "Helen, do you realize how ugly you look right now?" I couldn't help but smile bitterly. Yes, it was ugly. At that time, I was like someone possessed. I loved him too much. Or perhaps I had invested too much in him. Just the thought of losing him tore me apart. To put it bluntly, I was unwilling to let go. I had been with him for 10 years, stood by him from when he was a poor nobody to where he is now. Someone everyone has to call President Liu. How could someone he's known for just a year take him away from me? I started dressing up more, paying more attention to the dishes I cooked, trying hard to be more gentle. I fought a one-sided battle with a woman I didn't even know, thinking I could win Henry back this way. But last night, when I went to pick up a drunken Henry, I saw him sitting by the roadside with a young girl, dressed in a well-tailored dark suit, his long legs naturally crossed, his sharp jawline softened by the dim streetlight. The face that was too pretty in his youth had matured over the years, becoming more composed, like fine wine growing richer with time. I suddenly remembered when we first got together. We used to sit by the roadside like that. I brought him a new dish I had made, and after taking a bite, he fell silent. I thought it tasted bad and felt a little nervous. "What's wrong?" Henry looked up and suddenly smiled at me. I was just thinking, what did I do to deserve such a good wife? I blushed. On that cold winter street, he wrapped me in his coat, his breath forming white puffs as he spoke. "When I get rich someday, I'll open a big restaurant for you with your name on it. Then everyone in the world will know how amazing my wife is and how delicious her cooking is." I looked up, and he looked down. In his dark, beautiful eyes, I saw the thousands of lights behind me and my smiling reflection. That was so long ago, so long that if I hadn't seen the scene, I might not have remembered it at all. The young man who once had eyes only for me really did become rich, just like he said. But the person by his side is no longer me. How is it? Does it taste good? Clara asked, swinging her legs with a smile. I made these grilled rice balls myself. It took me a long time. Henry held the simple grilled rice ball in his hand, his eyes full of tenderness. It's delicious. And there I stood, holding a thermos of soup that I had simmered for 4 hours, feeling like a complete joke. Henry glanced up at me, his movements pausing, and his brows furrowed instinctively. What are you doing here? Clara looked me up and down, pretending not to be obvious, then waved at me. Are you Mrs. Helen? She came closer with a grin. I didn't expect you to be so beautiful. Henry never mentioned it at the office. He had a few drinks with some developers today. Oh, is this the late-night snack you prepared? She took the lunchbox from my hand and opened it. The fragrant smell of steaming fish soup wafted out, tinged with a hint of pepper spiciness. She took a deep breath. It smells amazing, Mrs. Helen. You're a great cook. Then she glanced at me, her lips curling into a smirk. It's just a pity that Henry already ate. I brought grilled rice balls from home. A girl in her early 20s. Her provocations were so straightforward, with a kind of fearlessness that comes with youth. Or perhaps it was Henry's favoritism that gave her the courage to be so blunt. I looked at Henry. You ignore the good food at home to eat trash outside. Huh? Henry's face darkened. Clara didn't get angry, just smiled with pursed lips. Actually, it's not about what you eat, but who you eat with. When you eat with someone you love, even simple food tastes like a feast. But with someone you're tired of, even a full banquet tastes like sawdust. Mrs. Helen, don't you agree? I glanced at Clara and sneered. Yeah, for a pair of dogs and bitches, even eating shit together must taste great. Clara's face turned dark, and she fell silent. Henry stood up, his expression grim. Helen, that was too much. Not wanting to make a scene in public, I lowered my eyes. Let's go home. Henry finished the grilled rice ball in his hand and called a driver. Make sure she gets home safely, he said to the driver. Right in front of me, without any hesitation, Clara pouted as she got into the car, giving Henry a seemingly coquettish look before leaving. I watched her back, a young girl full of life. Even her arrogance carried a certain innocence. Her high ponytail swayed behind her, revealing her pale legs under the short white skirt. Just like I was back then, even her facial features bore a slight resemblance to mine in those days. But I wasn't foolish enough to think Henry was looking for a younger version of me in her. He probably always liked this type. Whether at 20 or 30, he preferred girls in their early 20s. That night, I didn't argue with Henry. I took my blanket and moved to the guest room. And he didn't stop me. Before leaving, I asked him one last question. Henry, what are you thinking? I had loved this man for 10 years. Even if this relationship was doomed, I wanted to understand why. Henry pulled a cigarette from the pack and held it between his fingers. After a moment of silence, he suddenly said, Helen, I'm tired. The orange flame flickered in the air as he took a deep drag, exhaling white smoke, then turned to look at me. I'm tired of you revolving around me every day, always asking me what I want to eat. Eat. I married a wife, not a cook. What else do you do besides cooking 3 meals a day? I stared at him for a moment, watching as the white smoke blurred his face. The boy who once held me and said his dream was to eat my cooking for the rest of his life had faded away with the smoke. In that moment, I finally realized. The young man I loved had long been ground down and disappeared in the sands of time. The man standing in front of me was no longer the lover I remembered. I didn't say another word and turned to leave. Chapter 3. The next day, Henry went to work as usual. Regarding what happened yesterday, he didn't explain a single word to me. Perhaps he didn't think it was necessary. From his perspective, I might still swallow my anger and act as if nothing had happened. But I poured that bowl of fish soup, which no one had drunk and had already cooled and become fishy, into the toilet. and directly went out to file for divorce. Marriage is actually no different from cooking. I suddenly realized, if I can't eat this dish anymore, then I won't eat it. While sitting on the plane, I looked out the window. The magnificent skyscrapers gradually shrank until they were no longer visible, then were covered by thick clouds. I came to this city for Henry. He wanted to start a business in the big city, so I gave up my chef career and followed him here. I still remember when I left. The restaurant owner was extremely upset. You are the most promising chef in these years. If you persist, you will definitely achieve great things. Why are you quitting? My family's culinary skills have been passed down for generations, and our ancestors received plaques bestowed by the emperor. I also wanted to carry forward the Koo family recipes, but at that time, my heart and eyes were all on Henry. My parents passed away early. I only learned half of the recipes before they died in a car accident. I was raised by my grandmother. After my grandmother passed away, I had no other relatives left in this world. Sometimes I wonder if it's because there were too few people in my life that I cherished Henry so much, and was willing to make endless compromises to keep him. He often skipped meals because of meetings, and I cooked for him 3 times a day at home, to accommodate his schedule. I gave up my own dreams and became a housewife. The former passion and dreams slowly drifted away from me, leaving only the mundane daily necessities. But I didn't mind, because I loved him. I naively thought that as long as we loved each other, everything would be fine. Looking back now, it was truly foolish. It turns out that he couldn't be kept, no matter how much I tried. Just like the lyrics say, sand that can't be held, it's better to let go. After not returning home for several years, my hometown had changed. The exterior walls of the old neighborhood had been repainted, and the neighbors had become new faces. Only the street in front of the door remained as lively as ever. In the evening, the air was filled with the aroma of barbecues and beer. I bought a bunch of ingredients, planning to cook a good meal to treat myself. Henry couldn't handle spicy food due to his stomach issues. Over the years, I had always accommodated his tastes and rarely ate the spicy dishes I liked. While sitting on the bus, I was contemplating how many dishes to make tonight when someone suddenly leaned onto me. Startled, I looked up and saw a young boy wearing a black hoodie, his head down so I couldn't see his face. His black hair was damp with cold sweat, sticking to his forehead as he leaned against me. A faint scent of tobacco mixed with lemon lingered around my nose in the stuffy bus compartment. Sorry. He opened his mouth and weakly said, "Low blood sugar. Do you have any sugar?" I hurriedly tore open the packet of white sugar I had bought for cooking at the supermarket. "Is this okay?" He looked at the sugar in my palm and smiled helplessly. "Sure." He slightly bowed his head. The slightly cool lips touched my palm, and I blushed, quickly standing up to help him sit down. "Here, sit down." The boy grabbed the bag of sugar and took a few bites before looking up. Under his slightly tousled bangs were a pair of dark, soulful eyes. After the faint weakness and paleness were subdued, the slightly raised corners of his eyes and eyebrows carried a hint of roguishness. "Thank you." Only then did I realize he was a very good-looking young man, probably only in his early 20s. His nose was narrow and straight. His single eyelids were thin, with a slight pink tint. However, his eyelashes were too long and dark, drawing sharp, knife-like lines at the corners of his eyes. That slight beauty also made him handsome. "You're welcome." I couldn't help but look at him a bit more. I didn't pay much attention to this little episode until I got home and started cooking. I realized I was out of sugar and had to go buy more. Reluctantly, I took off my apron and went downstairs. But as soon as I opened the door, I froze. In front of the neighbor's door, the same boy I had met on the bus was inserting a key into the keyhole. Upon seeing me, his eyes lit up. "It's you, so you're the new neighbor, huh?" I nodded. What a coincidence. After thinking for a moment, I greeted him again. "Are you feeling better?" He smiled. "Nothing serious. Just been busy all day and forgot to eat." I didn't want to say anything, but seeing his young age, I couldn't help but advise him, "When you're young, you should eat well, or your stomach will develop problems." He looked like a rebellious youth but nodded obediently. "All right. What a nice smell. It smells wonderful. Are you cooking?" "Yes, but now I need to go buy more sugar." I watched him sniff around like a puppy. Smells really good. What are you cooking? I politely said. Tofu and fish head soup, and a few home-style dishes. Want to try? Actually, I was just being polite, but I didn't expect his eyes to instantly curve up. May I? Yes. Then I'll go buy more sugar. He took the shopping bag from my hand and left on his own, one hand in his pocket and the other waving at me. Watch the fire. I'll be right back. Just like that. I don't know how it happened, but on the first day back, I ended up eating dinner with the neighbor boy. He ate without lifting his head. His cheeks puffed as he mumbled, "Helen, your cooking is amazing." I glanced at this boy named Santiago, clearly younger than me by quite a bit. Yet he never called me sister. Ever since he knew my name, he called me Helen. Helen. During the meal, I learned that he was starting his own business alone. It was the busiest time, and the company was short-staffed. He was working as if he were 3 people, which was why he was too busy to eat. You don't know. I've been eating instant noodles for a week. It's been a long time since I had such a good meal. I looked at the black Richard Mille on his wrist. If I'm not mistaken, Henry also has one like that in his collection. It's so expensive that it could buy a car worth over 100,000. And now it's even pricier. Almost impossible to buy even with money. A wealthy young master holding a car on his wrist gazed at me with his dark eyes unblinking. Can I have another bowl of rice? I reluctantly nodded. That night, I planned to save a pot of rice for tomorrow's fried rice. But Santiago ate almost all of it. His appetite was shocking. Several times, I couldn't help but examine his stomach, trying to see where all the rice had gone. He probably felt a bit embarrassed. After washing the dishes himself, he peeked out from the kitchen and asked, "Do you need me to do anything else?" I thought for a moment. The light bulb in the room is broken. Could you help me change it? I was just speaking casually, not expecting such a wealthy young master to fix the light bulb. But surprisingly, he actually went down and bought a bulb to replace it for me. As he stepped on the stool to reach up, a firm waist was revealed from beneath his hoodie, with clear abs visible. I couldn't help but glance, looking again, but Santiago caught me, smiling as he lowered his head and said, "Does it look good? Do you want me to lift it up and show you clearly?" He pretended to lift his hoodie. I was startled and took a step back, frantically waving my hands. No, no, no. Even until he left, the image of those abs lingered in my mind. That night, I originally thought I would be sleepless, especially since I had just decided to get a divorce. But perhaps because Santiago suddenly disrupted my thoughts, I didn't think much about Henry. I had a good night's sleep. Chapter 4. In the days that followed, I walked around the neighborhood and checked out a few storefronts. I decided to pick up my culinary skills again and continue pursuing the dream I had left unfinished. I would start by opening a small restaurant. As the night slowly darkened the sky, I was sitting on the sofa, studying recipes when my phone suddenly rang. When I picked it up, I saw it was Henry. It had been 3 days since I told him I wanted a divorce, and this was the first time he had called. "Why haven't you come back yet?" His tone was as impatient as ever, as if I were the one being unreasonable. I calmly replied, "Henry, I'm not coming back. Are you really going to divorce?" He sneered. "Helen, how long are you going to keep up this act?" I didn't want to argue with him anymore. Just sign the divorce papers and send them to me. If there's anything you're unhappy with, we can discuss it. Henry was silent for a moment. Then his tone grew colder. "Suit yourself," he said coldly, then hung up. This didn't affect my mood much because Santiago had come over for dinner again. Lately, it was as if he had installed surveillance in my house. Every time I started cooking, the doorbell would ring. He never came empty-handed either. He always brought something, and it was always something expensive. Freshly in-season durians, exquisite tableware, tea cakes that looked aged. If I refused, he would insist, saying he couldn't finish or use them alone. And if he gave them to me, he could keep coming over to mooch off my meals. He also helped out in the kitchen and was surprisingly handy. After a while, I couldn't bring myself to turn him away. And somehow, I found myself accepting him as my regular dinner companion. There was a dish in the old recipe book that called for a whole duck, and I wanted to try it out. The supermarket was having an evening sale, and with nothing better to do, I went out to take a look. But I didn't know whether it was because the old neighborhood had poor security or because I was just unlucky. On the way home, I suddenly felt like someone was following me. I turned around, and under the dim streetlight in the alley, a man was slowly walking not far behind me. Something wasn't right. I seemed to have seen this man when I left the supermarket. Cold sweat broke out all over me, and I wasn't sure if I was overthinking it. But I quickened my pace, trying to shake him off. But he kept following me, and as I bent down to go upstairs, he entered the stairwell too. I was terrified and used every bit of speed I had to rush into my apartment and lock the door behind me. Looking out through the peephole, I didn't see the man. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking it was over. But unexpectedly, when I got up in the middle of the night, I found that the power had gone out, and maybe it was just my imagination. But outside, there seemed to be rustling sounds. Gathering my courage, I peeked through the peephole, but it was pitch black outside, and I couldn't see anything. But for some reason, a thought suddenly popped into my head. There's someone outside. I quickly stepped back, feeling as if I'd been frozen from head to toe, shivering with cold. I didn't care if I was overthinking it or not. I immediately called the police. The police station was a bit far from my house, and the officer on the line said it would take about 20 minutes to arrive, advising me to stay safe. The noise outside was getting louder, and I was so scared that tears started to well up in my eyes. Instinctively, I opened my phone and dialed Henry's number. He answered quickly. "Hello?" Leaning against the locked bedroom door, I whispered tearfully, "Henry," but before I could finish, he interrupted me, his tone mocking. "Regret it? Helen, weren't you so tough before?" My whole body was trembling, and I couldn't care less about his attitude. "Henry, someone's trying to break into my door. I'm so scared." "Could you?" But what could he do? I was just seeking comfort from him out of habit in the scariest moment. But Henry laughed. He sneered. "Helen, if you're looking for an excuse to back out, at least come up with a more believable one." The words got stuck in my throat. I was silent for a long time before hanging up the phone. It wasn't exactly disappointment. I stared at the screen glowing with white light. I was already planning to divorce him. His reaction didn't seem that surprising, but for some reason, I suddenly felt very tired. My heart empty, as if a cold wind could blow right through it. Even the fear seemed to numb as the exhaustion set in. The noise outside seemed to have stopped. But moments later, I suddenly heard a man's cold voice. "What are you doing?" It was Santiago's voice. Then there was the heavy thud of something hitting the ground. I quickly unlocked the door and rushed out. I saw Santiago standing there, shirtless, wearing only gray pajama pants, glaring down at the small, sleazy-looking middle-aged man he had thrown to the ground. "I asked you a question," he said coldly. "What the hell are you doing trying to break into someone's house in the middle of the night?" The man groaned in pain, glanced at Santiago's tall, muscular frame, and fear flashed in his eyes. "And nothing. I just went to the wrong door." Santiago sneered and reached out to grab him, but the man was surprisingly agile. He rolled off the ground and bolted downstairs. Cursing, Santiago vaulted over the railing, catching the man by the collar, but the man wriggled out of his shirt, leaving Santiago holding an empty garment. "Shit!" Santiago cursed, then glanced back at me, still standing in shock, and chose to return to comfort me instead. That night, the police came and took our statements. They said the man was likely a repeat offender. He had probably cut the power to my apartment and was waiting for me to come out. Luckily, I hadn't gone out alone, or the consequences could have been unthinkable. After they left, I asked Santiago, "How did you happen to be out there?" "I was just working out." He was still annoyed about not catching the guy. "I heard something outside, so I came out to check." "Thank you. If it weren't for you, I really don't know what would have happened." I thanked Santiago, my face pale, and after looking at me for a moment, he suddenly reached out and hugged me. His presence completely enveloped me, his slightly hot body temperature transferring through the thin fabric of my nightgown. I should have pushed him away, but at that moment, His embrace genuinely soothed my nerves. We stood there in the dimly lit hallway, holding each other. His back was smooth and firm, radiating warmth. The scent of tobacco lingered in the thickening air, wrapping around me like a web. Something indescribable seemed to be brewing. My heart suddenly started racing for no reason, and feeling a bit awkward. I pushed him away. "Thank you. Wait for me," Santiago said, his expression unchanged. As he returned to his apartment, he came back with a pillow and a blanket. "He probably won't come back, but just in case, I'll sleep at your place tonight." He said it so naturally, and it made a certain amount of sense. I wanted to refuse, but the words stuck in my throat, and I hesitated. We had only just met, and it didn't seem right for a man and a woman to be alone together, right? "Don't worry." He seemed to see through my thoughts and grinned. "I'll sleep on the sofa. If you're still worried, just lock your door and get some rest." I had been pretty scared, but for some reason, knowing Santiago was outside, I quickly drifted off to sleep, and I slept soundly, without any dreams. I was awakened by a delicious smell, and for a moment, I thought I was still dreaming. When I came out in my slippers, I saw Santiago in the kitchen, wearing an apron. Seeing me, he raised a spatula and said, "Awake? Go freshen up and eat." I made some porridge. I stood by the wall, suddenly feeling a bit dazed. I was past the age where a bowl of porridge could move me, but at that moment, my heart felt a bit warmer. When Santiago brought the sweet porridge to me, I couldn't help but say, "I didn't know you could cook." "I can't," Santiago said proudly, "but I can learn. I followed a video. Didn't miss a single step." I laughed. "Thank you. You didn't have to do all this. I could have made it." But Santiago suddenly stopped smiling, looked at me seriously, and said, "Helen, cooking is your interest, not your obligation. No one has to cook for someone else. You don't need to do this." I was stunned. What I said earlier was just out of habit, because after being with Henry for so many years, I was always the one who cooked. He couldn't cook and had never done it. Even when I was sick, it was the housekeeper who came to cook. I never thought that one day someone would tell me that cooking was just my interest, not my obligation. That someone would make a meal for me and then tell me that I didn't have to do this. I lowered my head, suddenly feeling like I had been wrong for the past 7 years. Henry was right. I shouldn't have always revolved around him. I just thought it was for the best for both of us. But now I realize that marriage shouldn't be one-sided, with endless concessions and compromises. Before leaving, Santiago reminded me, "If anything happens, call me right away." He smiled. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." Chapter 5. The small shop slowly started to get on track. The decor was all done according to my taste, and there weren't many tables and chairs because, for now, I'm the only one running the place. I plan to finalize the menu and pick an auspicious day for the grand opening. The days spent working on the menu were fulfilling, and it wasn't until my phone's security app sent a notification that I suddenly realized I hadn't thought about Henry in a long time. The notification showed that a stranger had entered my house, so I casually opened the app to check. Clara was helping a drunken Henry, struggling to get him onto the sofa. Henry's brows were furrowed, and he was slightly hunched over. His stomach was acting up again. "It hurts," he murmured. "Medicine." Clara rummaged through the drawers, unable to find his medication, and in desperation, she ordered some medicine through delivery. She gave Henry some warm water. "The medicine will be here soon. Just hang in there." But when the medicine arrived, it wasn't the type Henry needed, and after taking it, the pain on his face didn't ease at all. Clara didn't know that Henry's stomach medicine was specially made by a hospital far away. It took me a long time to find that place, and every 3 months, I would go to get a prescription filled and keep the medicine at home. For 7 years, I never missed a single time, no matter the weather. When his stomach acted up, I would also make a special soup to soothe his stomach. After drinking the soup and taking the medicine, the pain would gradually subside. In fact, his stomach had almost fully recovered after years of my care. But over the past year, as he started coming home less frequently and eating irregularly, the stomach problems returned. Now that I was gone, There was no one to get his medicine, and the supply he had must have run out. And there was no one to make the soup for him anymore. Henry pulled Clara close, burying his face in her neck. At first, Clara blushed and shyly reached out, intending to hug him back, but she froze when she heard Henry's murmurs, and her expression darkened. Henry was calling, "Helen." I looked down at my phone screen, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. "I'm not Helen." Clara struggled. Henry, you've got the wrong person." Henry barely opened his eyes, and when he saw her, he instinctively pushed her away. "Who are you? Where's Helen? Get out!" Helen. Clara's face darkened with anger. She awkwardly got up, grabbed her bag, and stormed out. I put down my phone and closed my eyes. In the early hours of the morning, the noise from a passing truck woke me up. I groggily opened my eyes, and when I picked up my phone to check the time, I noticed that Henry was still sitting in the living room. He looked like he had sobered up, just sitting there quietly in the dark living room, looking strangely lonely. After sitting for a while, he got up and searched the drawer for his stomach medicine. But, as expected, the medicine was all gone. The drawer was empty. He crouched there for a while, lost in thought. After a long time, he simply sat down on the floor and lit a cigarette. Smoking would only make his stomach pain worse, but he didn't seem to care anymore. I didn't feel particularly satisfied or vindicated. In fact, I was a bit disinterested. After watching for a while, I put my phone down. It wasn't until I woke up the next morning that I realized Henry was still sitting in the living room. The floor around him was littered with cigarette butts. He hadn't slept all night. Chapter 6. I was sitting in the living room watching a TV drama when Clara called. The summer rain was pouring down heavily, raindrops splashing against the glass and breaking into streams of water. A small cat was curled up next to me, purring softly. "Ms. Helen," she said, "we need to talk." I was eating the durian that Santiago had brought, and I couldn't help but frown. What is there to talk about? If you've already decided to divorce him, what's the point of still hanging around him? Or are you just playing hard to get, planning to take him back? "I don't know what you're talking about." I was about to hang up, but Clara's tone turned angry. "Stop pretending. If you weren't clinging to him, why would Henry suddenly start acting cold towards me these past few days? Let me tell you, this isn't going to work. Do you know what he said about you before? He said all you do is revolve around him all day, and he's sick of it. He said I remind him of his younger days and that being with me makes him happy." I couldn't help but laugh. "Oh, if he likes you so much, why don't you go find him? Where is he?" Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. I thought it was the milk tea I had ordered and went to answer it in my slippers. Clara didn't respond for a moment, then finally gritted her teeth and said, "He went to find you. Are you satisfied now?" "Helen, even if you take him back, it's useless. He'll get tired of you again soon enough. If he cheated once, he'll do it twice, 3 times. It's only a matter of time before he realizes who he really loves." The audacity of her words was truly eye-opening, but I didn't think Henry would actually come to find me. We'd been apart for so long, and he hadn't contacted me. I didn't want to continue arguing with Clara, so I spat out a few words. "Stop talking nonsense. If you're not disgusted by your own words, I certainly am." Then I hung up, but when I opened the door, I was stunned. Henry stood there, completely soaked, his lips pale and his eyes fixed on me. He looked utterly miserable. "He actually came. What are you doing here?" I asked, confused. "I told you to just mail the divorce papers to me. Did you really have to deliver them in person?" Henry looked at me for a long time before suddenly saying, "Helen, come back." I suddenly found it absurd. After a year of arguments, 6 months of silent treatment, and 2 months of divorce wrangling, he suddenly showed up at my door, asking me to come back. "You must be out of your mind." I didn't want to say more and started to close the door. At that moment, my neighbor, an older woman, came down the stairs. Oh dear. It started raining out of nowhere, and my electric scooter is still outside. She spotted Henry immediately, her expression turning cautious. "Helen, who's this man? Oh, by the way, The guy who was following you and trying to break into your door got caught by the police. I heard he's been detained. She stared at Henry, a warning in her voice. I felt a warmth in my heart. This is an old friend. Thanks. Aunt Wong. Oh, that's good. Aunt Wong turned to leave but then noticed Henry's face. Her suspicion vanished, and her eyes lit up. Oh my, Helen, your friend is so handsome. Does he have a girlfriend? My niece. He's already married. Oh, Aunt Wong clicked her tongue, regretfully casting another glance at Henry before heading downstairs. What a shame. Henry pressed against the door, looking a bit shocked. Was it true, what you said? Someone really tried to break into your place? I looked up at him coldly. What do you think? I thought you were. His expression was complicated. I'm sorry. Save it. I smirked. If I had relied on you, I'd probably be dead by now. Keep your worthless apology, Helen. Henry suddenly grabbed my hand, water dripping from his black hair. He pursed his lips. I'm serious. I went too far before. We've come so far. There's no need to make things ugly. If you come back, I'll transfer Clara to another branch, so you won't have to see her again. How about that? I looked at the man I had loved since I was a teenager, feeling a bit dazed. Henry's offer was to keep up appearances, for me to go back to revolving around him as I used to. He expected me to ignore his wandering, his infidelity, and pretend none of it had happened. But how could I? How could you love someone and tolerate their betrayal? Yet he said it so casually, as if he was certain I would continue to endure for him. Because he knew I loved him. He was using my love as a weapon to hold me hostage. Never had I been so acutely aware that the pure, passionate love I once felt had been twisted, warped, and turned foul over the years. Get lost. I tried to close the door, but he held it firmly. Helen. He seemed puzzled. You're just hung up on Clara, aren't you? What do you want? What else do you need from me? The difference in strength between men and women is significant, and he was about to push the door open easily, but then a voice came from behind me. Helen. Who's this? I turned around to see Santiago, wrapped only in a towel, drying his wet hair with another. The muscles along his waist formed a perfect V-line. Henry froze. After a moment, he looked down at me, anger swelling in his eyes. Helen. Who is he? Chapter 7. Just as I was about to say something, Santiago walked over, put his arm around me, and extended his hand with a grin. You must be Lena's ex-husband. Oh, I've heard so much about you. Nice to meet you. I'm Lena's current partner. Nonsense. He was just here because his water heater was broken and he needed to use my bathroom. But for some inexplicable reason, I didn't correct him and let Santiago's words stand. Henry's face turned ashen, and for a moment, I thought he might turn around and leave, but he actually held back, took a deep breath, and barely managed to compose himself. Helen, I can understand if you needed to have some fun when you were upset. I don't mind. The way he said I don't mind sounded like he was practically gritting his teeth. Henry closed his eyes briefly. If you come back now, I'll pretend none of this ever happened. For a moment, I felt like applauding him. What a generous first wife's attitude. I sneered. Henry, are you saying that because you cheated too? We're even now, and we can just go back to sharing the same bed as if nothing happened? Henry didn't respond, but his eyes said that's exactly what he was thinking. I found it incredibly laughable. Suddenly, I didn't even know what I had been guarding all these years. It was as if the love I once cherished had grown into something unbearable and ugly without me even realizing it. Santiago, however, suddenly chuckled. He looked Henry up and down, smirking. I heard you found yourself someone younger, right? Well, who doesn't like younger ones? They're fresh and full of energy. Lena likes them too. He pulled me closer. I'm only 21, and Lena has me now. Why would she go back to an old, wilted cabbage like you? Whatever you've got, I've got. And what you don't have, I've got too. Wake up, old man. He kept calling Henry old man, but every word was like a dagger. I looked at Henry's face, which had darkened to the extreme, and I was almost afraid he might faint from anger. All right, We're going to get some rest. Old man, do you have any money? If not, I can give you some so you can stay at a hotel. He tightened his grip on my waist, his expression suggestive. It's late, and we've got some things to do. Before he could finish his sentence, Henry had already punched him in the face. Well, with a mouth like that, getting hit was probably deserved. But Santiago didn't get angry. He just laughed, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and then turned around and punched Henry right in the stomach. Henry's stomach was already in bad shape, and he groaned in pain, his face twisted in agony. The two tall men started throwing punches and kicks at each other in the narrow hallway. Enough! I rushed forward, placing myself between them, glaring at Henry. Henry, have you lost your mind? The fierceness Santiago had shown earlier vanished in an instant. He grabbed my arm and shook it, pretending to be aggrieved. Lena, did you see that? He hit me. It hurts. You're protecting him? Henry seemed to find it absurd, not even bothering to wipe the blood from his face, as he suddenly erupted. Helen, we've been together for 10 years, and you're protecting him right in front of me? You've only known him for a few days. Yeah, and didn't you protect Clara right in front of me before? I chuckled lightly. Henry, don't come and disrupt my life anymore. It's over between us. Henry stared at me in disbelief. Santiago had hit him several times, and he hadn't reacted much. But after I said that, his body suddenly slumped as if all the life had been drained from him. Fine. After a long pause, he forced a bitter smile. Helen, you're really something. I'm leaving. With that, he staggered down the stairs, the dim hallway light casting shifting shadows over his face as he went. I stood there, feeling a sharp, tingling pain deep in my heart. Thanks for today. I tried to maintain my composure, but my voice still trembled a bit. Let me put some medicine on your wound. I pulled Santiago into the living room, using a cotton ball soaked in iodine to disinfect the cut on his lip. He looked down at me, his handsome face now carrying a hint of toughness from the wound. We were very close, our breaths mingling, and I could smell the scent of my shower gel on him. Does it hurt? I asked. I meant what I said. Santiago suddenly spoke up. Helen, consider giving me a chance. I looked up, and his gaze was unfiltered in its intensity. I'm good-looking. I come from money, and I'm young and capable. Helen, I would never treat you like your ex-husband did. Give it a try with me. I couldn't help but laugh. This guy always speaks so bluntly, narcissistic like a rogue. What's so funny? Santiago looked a bit displeased. I really like you. I continued applying the iodine, my tone calm. This isn't love. It's just a momentary whim. You should find someone your own age to fall in love with. We're not suitable for each other. Santiago fell silent, his face lengthening. Come on. I'm 21, not 12. I know the difference between a whim and something real. Helen, I really like you. Your stupid ex-husband doesn't deserve you. I put away the iodine. Enough. It would be a lie to say I wasn't moved. Santiago may be narcissistic, but he has every reason to be. As he said, it's hard not to be attracted to someone like him. A 21-year-old, handsome young man, looking you straight in the eye and saying he likes you. Who wouldn't be moved? But I've already lost once. I can't bear to go through it again. The most beautiful and fragile thing in this world is a promise. We sat in silence for a long time as I finished tending to his wound. Before Santiago left, he said to me, Helen, I know your last marriage hurt you, and it's normal to have reservations. But I'll prove to you that if you choose me, I won't let you be sad again. Chapter 8. When my friends heard about my decision to get a divorce, they all tried to gently persuade me against it. You've been through so much with Henry, and now that he's finally made it, you're just going to let another woman have him? Don't you think that's a waste? Yeah. I heard that Henry has been distancing himself from that mistress recently. He used to take her everywhere, but lately, she hasn't been around much. I think he transferred her to another branch. It's normal for men to get a bit excited about something new, but as long as he knows to come home and gives you all the money, isn't that enough? They meant well, and they weren't entirely wrong, but that's not the life I want. Life is short. Just a few decades, and I don't want to waste it with a man who has already changed his heart. When I returned to Beijing, I felt a bit disoriented. I had only been away for a few months, yet everything felt strangely unfamiliar. Henry came to pick me up, and the wounds on his face had almost healed. We barely spoke during the drive. It wasn't until we got out of the car that he said quietly, "Thank you." I nodded. "Your grandmother was always very kind to me. It's only right that I came to see her." Henry's grandmother was gravely ill, and her only remaining concern was her children and grandchildren. She said she really wanted to see me and Henry. Because of her condition, Henry asked me not to tell her about our impending divorce just yet. I agreed. Henry's grandmother had indeed been very good to me. I still remember when we were dating, and she came to visit. She learned that I liked eating cured meat. So every year, she would smoke a large batch and send it to me. She was already quite old then, and her family advised her not to overexert herself. But she would just smile and say, "Lena loves it." In just a few months, she had become frail and emaciated, her face lined with deep wrinkles. Those eyes that were always half-closed finally brightened when she saw us. She slowly reached out with her rough, thin hand to hold mine. "Lena, you're here?" I felt a lump in my throat. "Grandma." I couldn't finish my sentence. Grandma just looked at us, a faint, weak smile tugging at her lips. "It's okay. Don't cry. Everyone has their day. Child, don't cry. I've had a good life. Seeing you two happy, that's all I needed. Now I can rest in peace." Henry squeezed my hand, his voice hoarse. "Grandma, we'll be fine." Grandma rested for a moment and then turned to Henry. "Child, Lena has been with you all these years. Now that you're successful, you must not let her down. True love." Her voice was raspy as she continued. "True love is the hardest thing to find in this life. Someone who truly cares for you. No amount of money can buy that." Henry's hand trembled almost imperceptibly. "Okay." After Grandma fell asleep, we left the room. Henry pulled out a cigarette by the window but hesitated and put it back. We stood there in silence until he spoke first. "Helen, I realize now where I went wrong. I thought I was tired of the same routine, the endless meals, but now I understand how much effort you put into all of this. While you were gone, I did a lot of thinking. I wasn't truly in love with Clara. It was just a fleeting attraction. I've already broken up with her. I promise I won't make that mistake again. Let's reconcile. Go back to how we were before. We can have a child, and the three of us can be a happy family." There was a strange hope in his eyes, as if he really believed in the happiness he was describing. But I just found it laughable. Have a child, and let them inherit the genes of a cheating scumbag? The smile froze on Henry's face. He sighed. "I know I've hurt you deeply, Helen. It's okay, though. You've waited for me before. This time, I'll wait for you. I'm not giving up." I was disgusted and was about to go back to see Grandma one last time before leaving. But then I heard the sharp sound of high heels approaching, followed by an angry voice. "Henry, you broke up with me just to get back with her?" I turned around to see Clara storming in. A vein throbbed on Henry's temple. "What are you doing here?" Clara's voice wavered with emotion. "Henry, were you planning to dump me after you were done? Let me tell you, that's not happening. And let me tell you, we're finished." Henry's tone shifted from tender to cold and impatient. "Haven't I given you enough? I'm never going to divorce Helen and marry you. So give up on that idea." Clara stared at Henry, tears streaming down her face. "Henry, I'm pregnant. Then get rid of it." Henry's expression didn't change. "I have a wife. I don't need an outsider giving birth to a bastard child." Clara staggered back in disbelief, tears flowing uncontrollably, as if she couldn't comprehend how someone she had been so close to could suddenly turn so cold. I watched coldly, not surprised in the least. Henry was fundamentally selfish. He didn't truly love me, nor did he love Clara. He only loved himself. If he could easily discard someone he had loved for 10 years, what chance did Clara, who had only been with him for less than a year, have? Just as I thought Clara would leave in despair, she gritted her teeth and suddenly pushed open the door to the hospital room. With a loud bang, Grandma woke up with a start, and Clara rushed in. She threw herself beside Grandma's bed, pointing at me as she cried out, Grandma, Henry and she are already divorced. I'm your real granddaughter-in-law now. Henry wants to abandon me. Grandma, please help me. I'm already carrying his child. She pulled out an ultrasound from her bag and shoved it in front of Grandma's face. Look, Grandma, it might be a boy. This could be the Liu family's great-grandson. Grandma frowned deeply at Clara's shaking. She slowly lifted a trembling hand, pointing it at Henry as if she wanted to say something. Clara choked out, Grandma, please talk to Henry. This is his child. How can he be so cruel as to get rid of his own child? Grandma's face turned red with distress. I could tell something was wrong and stepped forward to pull Clara back. Clara, let go. Grandma's hand froze in midair. She stared at Henry, her face losing color inch by inch, turning ashen. Her hands suddenly dropped, lifeless. Everyone was stunned by the scene, and a moment later, I shouted, Doctor, doctor. Grandma didn't make it. The doctor said she was already at the end of her life. With proper care, she might have held on for a few more days, but the sudden shock was too much, and she couldn't take it. Clara seemed just as shocked by what had happened. She stood in the corner, petrified. She probably thought the old lady valued bloodlines and wanted her to persuade Henry to stay with her. She timidly reached out to tug at Henry. Henry. Henry slowly turned, the air in the room seeming to freeze. His face was contorted with fury, more terrifying than I had ever seen. Slap. The sound of the slap echoed as Clara was sent flying half a meter away, crashing hard to the ground. Her lips split open, blood oozing out. She held her face, staring blankly at Henry. Henry's voice was cold as ice. Get out! Henry's father then stepped forward, eyes red with anger, and kicked Henry hard. This is all your fault. You had a good life, and you had to ruin it by messing around outside. And you brought all this drama to your grandmother's deathbed. You drove her to her grave. The tragic scene dragged on into the night. Henry's father was determined to beat him to death, and Clara kept trying to protect him. Henry kept telling Clara to get lost, while Clara kept crying that she was carrying Henry's child. I was too exhausted and left first. Whatever the outcome, it no longer concerned me. I was just heartbroken for Grandma, a kind and loving woman who couldn't even pass away peacefully. Chapter 9. A few days later, Grandma's funeral was held. I paid my respects and left shortly after. Henry's mother grabbed my hand, tears choking her words. I patted her hand gently. The Liu family was actually very kind, but our fate had run its course. After returning home, I focused on preparing for the restaurant's opening. The space isn't big, but there's still a lot to prepare. Thankfully, Santiago has been helping me, which has saved me a lot of trouble. On the day of the first snowfall, while tidying up the house, I came across a metal box. When I opened it, I found it filled with letters Henry had written to me back in the day. Back then, we were just in high school and didn't have cell phones, so we communicated by writing letters every day. I paused for a moment and picked up one of the letters. Helen, let's walk to school together tomorrow. There's a girl who keeps bothering me, and I told her I have a girlfriend, but she doesn't believe me. It's so annoying. My mom made dumplings today, and they were delicious. Come over for dinner tomorrow. Today, the teacher called me in about our relationship. She said we're too young, that it's just a passing phase, and we'll break up in a few days. What nonsense. We'll always be together. Forever. Helen, let's bury a time capsule together. David gave it to me, and tomorrow's the weekend, so we can go out and do it. As I read the letter, a memory suddenly came to mind. When we were 18, Henry and I buried a time capsule together under the camphor tree at school. We wrote messages to our future selves and agreed to dig it up 10 years later. If I'm not mistaken, this year is the 10th anniversary. I couldn't quite remember what we wrote back then. Feeling a mix of emotions, I decided to go dig it up and see, but as I was heading downstairs, I stopped in my tracks. Henry was standing outside, covered in a thick layer of snow. He looked like he had been standing there for a long time. What are you doing here? I asked, frowning instinctively. Henry's lips moved slightly. Helen, I came to apologize. I've thought about it for a long time, and I realized I still owe you a proper apology. I lowered my head and started walking past him. It's not necessary. The best apology you can give me is to stay out of my life. He grabbed my arm, his eyes bloodshot. Helen, what do I have to do to make you come back? I was about to shake him off. But then, for some reason, I reached into my pocket and pulled out one of the letters he had written me and handed it to him. I'm going to dig up our time capsule from back then. Do you want to come with me? The school hadn't changed much in 10 years. The buildings had been repainted, and the playground was new, but the little shop outside the school was still there. Though the sign had gotten bigger, we went inside, and the owner, now showing signs of age, didn't remember us. He cheerfully handed us 2 hot drinks. The camphor tree seemed thicker than I remembered, now covered in snow. Occasionally, a clump of snow would fall from the branches and scatter in the wind. I took the shovel we borrowed from the shop owner and started digging where I thought the capsule might be. The ground was frozen hard, so Henry took the shovel, pressed his foot down, and finally managed to break the surface. The small stone we had used as a marker was long gone, and we dug for a long time, sweating despite the cold. Before finally finding the metal box, Henry carefully took it out and opened it, revealing the plastic time capsule inside. The capsule's colors were still bright, as if it had just been buried yesterday, but the little paper inside had yellowed with age. The handwriting was still a bit childish. First wish, to marry Helen. Second wish, to be with Helen forever. The 18-year-old Henry was asking his 28-year-old self. 10 years later. Henry, did my wish come true? It must have, right? Below was my handwriting. I also want to be with Henry forever. The words of our youth seemed to echo in my ears. But 10 years later, everything had changed. Henry stared blankly at the note in his hand, as if the swirling snow had frozen him in place. After a long time, his fingers started to tremble, and when he looked up, tears began to fall. Helen, his voice was raw with pain. I understand now what you wanted. I smiled faintly, then tore the note into pieces and tossed them into the wind. The fragments were carried away, swirling in the snow, disappearing from sight. Back then, I could never have imagined that our 7-year marriage would end in such a messy, heartbreaking way. The promises of our youth felt like arrows, piercing through the years, striking deep into our hearts. 10 years ago, Helen, your wish didn't come true. Henry and I are going our separate ways now. I brushed the snow off my hands and stood up. Let's go. But Henry grabbed me, falling to his knees in the snow. He pleaded, Helen, please, give me one more chance. I swear I'll never hurt you again. He bowed his head, tears falling into the snow, melting tiny holes. Please don't leave me. I stood there, hands in my pockets, watching him calmly. Henry, don't do this. Do you realize how ugly you look right now? When I finally turned to leave, I saw that Henry was still kneeling in the snow. Snowflakes were falling on him. Chapter 10. Santiago disappeared. One day, I just couldn't reach him anymore. Just as suddenly as he had appeared in my life, he vanished on a snowy day. After that, I never saw him again. I suppose I was sad for a while, but having already gone through what happened with Henry, and considering that Santiago and I hadn't known each other for very long, I eventually let it go. I figured he was so young that the things he said were probably just spur-of-the-moment feelings. We were never really from the same world, and after our brief intersection, we naturally returned to our separate lives. Fortunately, my restaurant finally opened, and I named it Koo's Cuisine. I plan to expand the business in the future and rename it Koo's Restaurant. The customers were full of praise for my cooking. In just a few days, the restaurant became incredibly popular, with people even helping to spread the word for free. As the restaurant got busier, I had to hire 2 more people to help with the workload. Gradually, I stopped thinking about Santiago as much, but occasionally, when I came home and saw that door that hadn't been opened again, I would still feel a bit lost. Until one day, after a long day at the restaurant, I came home and was stunned when I opened the door. Santiago was standing there, wearing an apron with a cat perched on his shoulder, smiling at me as he peeked out from the kitchen. Welcome home. I felt disoriented, as if we were back to how things were 6 months ago when we were at our closest. You, Santiago pursed his lips and quickly walked over to hug me. This hug was so tight, as if he wanted to merge me into his body. He buried his face in my shoulder. I'm sorry. That day, my father suddenly sent people to take me back. He said his health was failing and insisted I return to the family and marry someone to inherit the family business. I refused. So he had my phone taken away and locked me up at home, saying he wouldn't let me out until I changed my mind. I wanted to contact you so badly. I tried to escape several times. He rolled up his pant leg, revealing horrible scars on his calf as he smiled bitterly. I tried to climb down from the second floor, but they caught me and brought me back. I was a bit stunned and instinctively reached out to touch those scars. Does it still hurt? Santiago's gaze softened. It hasn't hurt for a long time. How did you get out? The game I was working on was almost finished, even after I was taken back. My team launched it as planned, and it became a huge hit. It made over 80 million yuan shortly after launch, and the revenue kept growing. I went on a hunger strike to protest, and my father eventually had to give in. He saw that I had my own career now, so he had no choice but to compromise. He said I could hire a professional manager to handle the family business from now on. He spoke lightly, but I could see that he had become thinner and his face looked worn out. It was clear that the struggle hadn't been as easy as he made it sound. Santiago held me tightly and murmured, "Helen, what should I do? I broke my promise. I said I would wait for you, but then I just disappeared. You must have been so sad." I didn't say anything, just patted his back gently. Snow began to fall outside again, and Santiago's voice caught in his throat. "You have no idea how much I missed you. My father wanted me to marry someone I didn't even like. I was terrified that while I was gone, you would get back together with your ex-husband or that someone else would steal you away." I teased him. "Yeah, my ex-husband has been begging to get back together. I've been considering it these past few days." Santiago didn't react, just stared at me with those sharp eyes. He had single eyelids, and when he looked down at someone, the corners of his eyes slanted up sharply, giving him a somewhat domineering look. For once, he didn't get angry. He just said calmly, "Come eat." I made beef stew with red wine, but when he took out the bottle of wine he used for the stew, I nearly spat out my food. A bottle of wine worth 30,000 yuan, and he used it to make beef stew. I was heartbroken. "You're such a spendthrift." Santiago just shrugged and said nonchalantly, "This kind of wine wouldn't even make it into my family's wine cellar, but there's still more than half a bottle left. So let's not waste it. Let's drink it." I didn't suspect anything. That night, we drank so much that I lost count. We had planned to finish the half bottle that was left, but somehow we ended up opening another bottle. By the end of it, I was crying and laughing, not even sure what I was saying, almost ending up under the table. Santiago held me up, letting me lean against him, responding to everything I said with a soft When I opened my eyes again, it was the middle of the night. My head was still a little fuzzy, and I hesitated about whether I should go to the bathroom. Santiago emerged from the bathroom, loosely wrapped in a towel, water dripping from his well-toned muscles. I was still groggy, my thoughts wandering. Hadn't he been locked up? How did he manage to keep in such good shape? But soon I realized something was wrong. Santiago stood by the window, looking down at me, and with one hand, he pulled off the towel. The moonlight cast shadows on his face, his sharp, handsome features taking on a sinister edge. Although his expression was neutral, I couldn't help but feel a shiver run down my spine. "What are you doing?" I propped myself up, instinctively shrinking back. Santiago smiled, revealing a set of gleaming white teeth. Chapter 11. My neck was bitten, sharp teeth pressing against my vein, making my whole body tremble uncontrollably. Santiago intertwined his fingers with mine, holding our hands together tightly. His movements were gentle and tender with his upper body, but below, he was relentless, advancing with determination. I opened my eyes in a daze, and Santiago leaned down to kiss away the moisture at the corners of my eyes. His actions were so forceful that it felt like he wanted to break me. Yet his voice was incredibly gentle. "Who's better, me or your ex-husband?" he asked. I couldn't find the words to answer. He laughed. The storm that followed nearly drained my mind dry. I had to cling to his arm, his firm muscles slightly damp, with a drop of sweat falling into the hollow of my neck. Am I better? Or is he better? He pushed harder, his voice even softer, as if he was really seeking my opinion. I bit down hard, feeling like my body was a small boat in a storm, tossed helplessly by the waves. Answer me. Santiago propped himself up, one hand gripping my chin. He smirked, still thinking about getting back with him? I couldn't take it anymore and broke down, crying out, "You're better." "I won't get back with him." "Good girl." He gently brushed aside my sweat-dampened bangs, like a satisfied master praising his prized possession. "Can we take a break?" I pleaded. "I have to open the restaurant tomorrow. My customers are waiting for me." "I can't." He didn't respond, just leaned down again. The moonlight fell on his back, highlighting the defined muscles. He was like a predator, endlessly enjoying his prey. Youth is terrifying. That was my last thought before I lost consciousness. Chapter 12. I didn't end up with Santiago. The next morning, when he asked for a commitment and didn't get it, the look in his eyes made me feel like he was ready to devour me alive. But I'm truly afraid of the promises made by young men. I'm scared that one day Santiago and I will end up like that too. And I can't bear to go through it again. We agreed on a 3-year period. If after 3 years he still loved me and chose me, then we would be together. Time passed slowly, and my restaurant became a well-known hotspot, bustling with customers every day. I eventually opened 2 more branches, expanding the business. I changed the name from Ku's Cuisine to Ku's Restaurant. I had thoroughly mastered the old recipes and began experimenting with new dishes, which were also well received. Everything seemed to be getting better, and the past began to fade like clouds dissipating in the sky. I rarely thought about it anymore, only occasionally hearing snippets about them from mutual acquaintances. The whole situation with Henry and Clara had been a huge scandal, and later I found out that Clara was never actually pregnant. She didn't want to break up with Henry, so she tried to use the idea of a child to trap him, planning to conceive for real after securing her position. But she hadn't anticipated that this lie would push Henry's grandmother to her death, completely severing her last connection with Henry. I heard that the Liu family sought revenge against her. She was swindled out of all her money, developed a gambling addiction, and eventually had to sell her body to pay off her debts. She drifted through low-end establishments, riddled with disease. No one knows where she is now or if she's even still alive. The next time I heard about Henry was when a friend called. She told me Henry had to undergo surgery because of a perforated stomach caused by excessive drinking. Since you left, he's been drinking heavily, and there were several times when he collapsed and was rushed to the hospital after vomiting blood. The doctor says this time it's so severe that they might have to remove part of his stomach. She sounded regretful. You were together for so many years. Can you really bear to see him like this? She sent me a video. Henry was lying in a hospital bed, looking much thinner, his eyelashes fluttering as he kept his eyes closed. The confident, arrogant man from before was gone, leaving only a shell of decay. I didn't say anything and hung up the phone. I thought about sending Henry a message but decided against it and put my phone down. This was his choice, his fate, and I didn't want to interfere or bear the burden anymore. Let it be. From a deep love in youth to mutual disdain. If we can end up not caring about each other, that's good enough. The summer nights by the sea were cool, and Santiago and I often went for walks along the beach after sunset. The moonlight was bright, and he kept splashing water onto my legs, never seeming to get tired of it. I reached out to grab him, but he caught my hand instead. A cool object slipped onto my finger. I looked down and saw a ring, the diamond shimmering faintly in the moonlight. I was stunned. Santiago knelt on one knee, looking up at me. The starlight gathered in his eyes, and I saw my reflection in them. I love you, Helen. My face flushed. Why so sudden? He said he loved me every day, so I had gotten used to it and didn't pay much attention. I didn't expect him to suddenly do this today. I mean it, he said seriously. Helen, 3 years have passed, and I still love you. I love you even more than I did before. I've made up my mind. Let's get married. I didn't say anything, just looked at him. He tilted his head. Helen? I smiled, pulling him up, and stood on my tiptoes. A cool kiss fell into the evening breeze.